Some places hold echoes of something sinister, something lurking beneath the ordinary. Tonight, we delve into 3 unsettling encounters, each one more chilling than the last. Keep the lights on, because you never know who or what might be watching you. Heartbreak makes people do strange things. That night, I just wanted to feel normal again, to distract myself with the familiar sound of billiard balls clacking together. The bar smelled like old wood and cheap whiskey, its dim lighting hiding the cracks in the furniture. It had been our place once. Now it was just another reminder of what was gone. I ordered a drink, lingering near the pool tables, absently chalking a cue. That's when he appeared. A man, maybe my age, maybe a little older. He had an easy confidence about him, the kind that felt rehearsed. "Up for a game?" he asked, leaning against the table. I hesitated for just a second before nodding. Anything to keep my mind occupied. We played. He was decent. Not incredible, but good enough to keep the game interesting. As the drinks flowed, I found myself relaxing. For the first time in weeks, I was having fun. But then, everything shifted. When he asked me to come back to his place, I laughed it off. "Not tonight," I said, trying to be playful, but he didn't laugh. His expression darkened, his smile vanishing. "Are you serious?" His grip on his cue tightened. I felt a sudden sharp tension in the air. Then, without warning, he grabbed my wrist. "You know how much I spent on your drinks tonight?" His voice was low, venomous. I froze. My heart pounded in my chest as I struggled to pull away, but his grip only tightened. A cold wave of fear washed over me, and then, just as suddenly, it was over. 2 older men at the bar had seen everything. One of them spoke, firm, authoritative. "Let her go." The man glared at me, muttered something under his breath, and threw my purse onto the table before storming out. I barely had time to process what had happened before I was out the door, calling an Uber, desperate to leave that place behind. I closed my eyes in the car, exhaling slowly, trying to calm my nerves. It was over, or so I thought. The Uber pulled up outside my house, and I stepped out, rummaging through my bag for my keys. That's when my phone vibrated in my pocket. I pulled it out, expecting a message from a friend. Instead, I saw a notification that made my blood run cold. AirTag found moving with you. My breath caught in my throat. Frantically, I dug through my purse, tossing aside my wallet, my makeup, until, there, a small, round device, cold metal against my fingers. I nearly dropped my phone. My hand started shaking as the realization set in. He had slipped a tracker into my purse. I crushed the AirTag under my foot, my breathing uneven. But even as I shattered the plastic shell, a question gnawed at the edges of my mind. What if there was another one? I turned, scanning the street, my heartbeat deafening in my ears. The road was empty, too empty. The silence felt unnatural, as if something, or someone, was lurking just beyond the glow of the streetlights. I forced myself to move. My keys fumbled in the lock, but finally the door swung open. I slammed it shut, locked it, bolted it, checked every window, twice. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I crept to the window, peeking through the blinds. That's when I saw it. A car, idling at the end of my street. It just sat there, headlights off, barely visible in the darkness. Then, as if sensing my gaze, it inched forward. I ducked away from the window, pressing my back against the wall, my pulse racing. When I looked again, it was gone. Days passed. I told myself it was over, that I was overreacting. And then, one morning, I found the note. It was tucked under my windshield wiper, written in uneven, almost frantic handwriting. "You can't hide forever." I felt my knees go weak. Had he followed me home again? Had he been watching me this whole time? I sprinted inside, locking the door behind me. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the window, watching, waiting. And then, just past midnight, I saw him. A figure, his figure, standing at the end of my driveway. He wasn't moving, wasn't trying to hide. He just stood there, staring. I grabbed my phone, my hands trembling. But the moment I looked back up, he was gone. Weeks passed, but the fear never left. Every time I stepped outside, I felt eyes on me. Every time my phone buzzed, my stomach twisted. Every time I heard a car engine idling outside, I thought, he's back. Then one night, it happened again. I woke to a sound, faint, almost imperceptible, a creak. My blood turned to ice. Someone was in my house. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Then, footsteps, slow, deliberate. I reached for my phone, my fingers barely functioning. But before I could dial 911, silence. I lay there, frozen, for what felt like hours. And then, just as the first light of morning crept through my window, I found it. A single smudged handprint on my bedroom door. That was 2 months ago. I haven't seen him since, but I know he's still out there, watching, waiting, for the right moment. 2 months had passed, yet the fear remained. It clung to me like a shadow, always lingering at the edges of my mind. I told myself I was being paranoid, that he had moved on, that I was safe. But deep down, I knew I was lying. I hadn't slept properly since that night. Every sound in my house made me jump. Every knock on the door sent a spike of adrenaline through my veins. I had changed my locks, installed security cameras, even bought a bat to keep next to my bed. And yet, none of it made me feel safe. Because safety is an illusion when you know someone wants to find you. Then one night, something changed. It was a little after 2 a.m. when I woke up to a faint tapping sound. At first, I thought I had imagined it, but then it came again. Tap, tap, tap. I held my breath, straining to listen. The sound was coming from my bedroom window. My stomach twisted into knots. My hands turned clammy as I slowly sat up, my eyes locked onto the curtains. The tapping stopped. I wanted to tell myself it was just the wind, a tree branch, anything but what I feared. But then, the curtain moved. I felt my heart seize in my chest. Someone was outside my window, watching me. I forced myself to move, grabbing my phone with trembling fingers. But when I swiped to open the camera feed from the security system, the screen froze. Error. No signal. Panic surged through me like wildfire. I tried again. Nothing. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a shape. A shadowy figure pressed against the glass, his face obscured in darkness. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. Then, as suddenly as he appeared, he was gone. I didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning I checked the security system again. The cameras were working fine now, like nothing had happened. I rewound the footage to 2 a.m. For a while, it was just stillness. The quiet, empty street, the dim glow of streetlights. Nothing unusual. And then, movement. A man, emerging from the shadows, walking toward my house. I watched in horror as he paused at my bedroom window, pressing his hand against the glass. But then, he did something that made my stomach drop. He looked directly at the camera, like he knew I'd be watching, and he smiled. I shut off the footage, my hands shaking. That evening, I triple-checked every lock. The paranoia was unbearable. I sat on the couch, trying to focus on the TV, but every sound made me jump. Then, just past midnight, creak, my blood ran cold. It was coming from inside the house. I grabbed my bat, my heart pounding in my ears. Slowly I crept toward the noise, and then I saw it. The basement door was open. I knew I had locked it. I was sure of it. A heavy silence filled the air, the kind that makes your skin prickle, your instincts scream. Something was down there. I should have called the police. I should have run. But instead, I took a slow step forward. And then, a hand shot out from the darkness. I stumbled backward, screaming. The bat fell from my hands as the figure lunged toward me. I barely had time to react before I bolted toward the door, fumbling with the locks, my fingers numb with panic. Behind me, footsteps pounded against the floor. I yanked the door open and ran, sprinting barefoot down the street, not daring to look back. I only stopped when I reached a neighbor's house, banging on their door until they answered. The police arrived minutes later, but when they searched my house, it was empty. No signs of forced entry, no intruder, just the basement door wide open, and on the floor near the stairs a single note. Not yet. That was 3 weeks ago. I haven't seen him since, but I know he's still out there, somewhere, watching, waiting for the right moment. Being a bartender means you meet a lot of people, some friendly, some annoying, and some unforgettable for all the wrong reasons. That night, the bar was packed. It was a Friday, our busiest night, and I barely had time to catch my breath between orders. The air smelled of expensive cologne, overpriced whiskey, and desperation. I was halfway through pouring a row of gin and tonics when I noticed him, a man standing at the far end of the bar, staring directly at me. Something about him was off. He didn't belong here. His jet black hair was messy, like he hadn't brushed it in days. His leather jacket was worn, stained, too old for this upscale place. But it wasn't his clothes that unsettled me. It was his expression. He looked angry, not drunk, not annoyed, just furious. And for some reason, that fury was aimed at me. I forced myself to keep working, ignoring the unease crawling up my spine. But when I finally turned to take his order, my breath caught in my throat. Before I could speak, he did. His first words sent a chill down my spine. I knew I'd find you here, Kevin. My entire body went rigid. He knew my name. I'd never seen this guy before in my life. I was sure of it. I tried to keep my voice steady. Do I know you? He didn't answer. He just smiled. A slow, unsettling smile that made my skin crawl. I know what you did. I stared at him, my mind racing. What was he talking about? Was this some kind of joke? A prank? Before I could say anything, he downed his drink in one gulp, tossed some crumpled bills onto the counter, and turned toward the elevator. I should have let him go, should have brushed it off. But something inside me needed to know. I left the bar and stepped into the elevator right behind him. The doors closed. We were alone. The air inside the elevator felt wrong, thick, heavy. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. I finally spoke. What do you mean you know what I did? He turned his head slightly, just enough for me to see the corner of his grin. You don't remember? I swallowed hard. I think you've got the wrong person. The elevator doors dinged open. He stepped out, but before leaving, he leaned in too close. His breath was ice cold against my ear as he whispered, "You will." Then he was gone. The doors shut again, leaving me shaking. That night I barely slept. I kept replaying the encounter over and over, searching for a memory, a connection, anything that would explain how he knew me. But there was nothing. And then, at exactly 3:12 a.m., I woke up. Something was in my room. The air felt wrong. I didn't move, didn't breathe. I just listened. For a long time there was nothing but silence. Then, a footstep, slow, deliberate, right next to my bed. I couldn't see who or what was there, but I could feel it, watching me. My fingers tightened around my phone under the blanket. Slowly I turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness. There was nothing there, but as I exhaled in shaky relief, My eyes landed on something that made my stomach drop. My bedroom door was open, and I knew for a fact I had locked it. The next day, I checked my security cameras. Everything seemed normal, until I fast-forwarded to 3:12 a.m. The footage showed my bedroom door slowly creaking open. No one entered. No one left. It just opened. My hands shook as I grabbed my phone. I texted my coworker, Karen, asking if she remembered the guy from last night. Her reply made my blood run cold. Who? She had no memory of him, but I knew he was real. I knew what I saw. And then, as I sat there, my phone buzzed with a new notification, a single text from an unknown number. Check under your bed. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. My entire body locked up with fear. With shaking hands, I typed back, "Who is this?" No response. I wasn't going to check. I wasn't going to give in to fear. But then, another message. "You don't remember me, but I remember you." My stomach twisted. This wasn't just some random stalker. This was personal. I stood up slowly, gripping my phone, and knock knock, my front door. I turned toward it, my heartbeat thundering. I knew it was him. But when I checked the peephole, there was no one there. The next few days were hell. I barely slept. I checked my phone constantly. I felt watched. Then suddenly, the text stopped. For a week, nothing happened. No messages, no knocks, nothing. I started to think maybe it was over, until the night my security camera caught him. At 3:12 a.m., the motion detector triggered. The footage showed a figure standing in my backyard, just standing there, watching my house. And then, he smiled at the camera and vanished, like he was never there. I haven't seen him since, but I know he's not gone. He's waiting, watching, for the right moment. And every night at exactly 3:12 a.m., I wake up, because I know he's still out there, waiting for me to remember. Heartbreak can make people do strange things. I thought a night out playing pool would help me move on from my ex, but what I found instead was something far more disturbing. The bar was exactly how I remembered it, dimly lit, worn down, and comforting in its own way. But nostalgia has a way of playing tricks on you. A man around my age asked if I was up for a game. It felt good to play again, to just enjoy the moment. But the moment didn't last. His demeanor shifted the second I declined his invitation back to his place. His face twisted in frustration, his grip on my wrist tightening. Muddle. Barely had time to react before he yanked my purse away. A couple of older men at the bar noticed and intervened. The man muttered something under his breath, tossed my purse onto the table, and stormed out. Shaken, I grabbed my things and called for an Uber. I wanted to forget the whole thing ever happened, but it wasn't over. As I stepped out of the car, my phone buzzed with a chilling notification. AirTag found moving with you. My breath caught as I rummaged through my bag. My fingers brushed against a small, unfamiliar object. My pulse pounded in my ears as I realized he had slipped a tracker into my purse. He knew where I was. Being a bartender means dealing with all kinds of people, but nothing prepared me for the man who walked in that night. He didn't fit in with the usual upscale crowd, disheveled, angry, and laser-focused on me. I barely had time to greet him before he uttered a sentence that froze me in place. "I knew I'd find you here, Kevin." My name. How did he know my name? I had never seen him before in my life. He didn't explain. He just downed his drink and walked away, leaving me standing there rattled. I spent the rest of the night trying to push the encounter out of my mind, but sleep did not come easy. Somewhere in the dead of night, I woke with an unshakable feeling of being watched. As my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I saw it, a shadowy figure standing in the corner of my room. I forced myself to stay still, my mind racing. Then, in a split-second decision, I lunged. But before I could reach him, he bolted out of the room. Something clattered to the floor in his wake. It was a knife, one from my own kitchen. I locked every door and called the police, but there was no sign of forced entry, no sign of how he got in, and no trace of the man from the bar. After that night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face, grinning, watching. I kept telling myself it was over. He was gone, but the fear didn't fade. Then, a week later, I noticed something strange. The front door of my apartment, the solid oak door that had once made me feel safe, was different. At first, I couldn't put my finger on it, but then I saw them. Scratches, deep, uneven marks carved into the wood near the handle. Someone had been trying to get in. I stared at the scratches, my breath coming in short, rapid bursts. Was it him? Had he come back? I ran my fingers over the grooves. They weren't old, they were fresh. A horrible realization settled over me. What if he hadn't left at all? That night, I barricaded the door with furniture and sat on my couch, gripping a baseball bat. Every noise outside made my pulse spike. At exactly 3:12 a.m., my phone rang. I nearly dropped it. The screen showed no caller ID. My stomach clenched. I hesitated, then answered. I pressed the phone to my ear, but there was no voice. Just breathing. Slow. Deliberate. I gritted my teeth. Who is this? Silence. Then, a whisper. You don't remember me, but I remember you. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, my hands shaking. I checked the call log, but there was nothing. No record of the call, like it had never happened. The next night I had to work. I didn't want to. I wanted to stay locked inside, but I needed the money. The bar was packed, and for a while, I let myself believe I was safe. I stayed busy, avoiding the dark thoughts swirling in my head. Then, just as I started to relax, I saw him, sitting in the farthest booth, watching me. My stomach dropped. His grin was slow, deliberate, like he knew exactly how much fear he was putting into me. I tried to act normal, but my hands were shaking as I served customers. My mind raced. What do I do? Call the police? Confront him? Then I blinked, and he was gone. The booth was empty. I rushed over. The seat was still warm. He had been there. A folded napkin sat on the table. My hands trembled as I picked it up. There were just 2 words written on it. Not yet. I didn't sleep that night, or the next. I knew he was waiting. Then, on the 3rd night, something happened. I woke up to a noise. At first, I thought it was just a dream. But then, the sound came again. A creak. The sound of a floorboard shifting, inside my apartment. I shot up in bed, my heart hammering in my chest. The room was dark, silent, but I wasn't alone. I could feel it, the weight of another presence. Then, movement, a shadow in the corner. I reached for my phone with trembling fingers, but before I could turn on the flashlight, the whisper came. I told you, Kevin. You don't remember me, but I remember you. I lunged for the lamp, flooding the room with light. Nothing. The corner was empty, but my bedroom door was wide open, and I knew. I had locked it. I moved out the next day. I didn't pack. I didn't care. I just grabbed what I could and left. I moved to another city, changed my number, started over. For a while I thought I was safe, until last night. When I got home, there was a package waiting for me. No return address, no postage, just my name. I took it inside, my hands shaking as I opened it. Inside was a single object, a napkin, with 2 words written on it. Not yet. I don't think he's gone. I think he's still out there, waiting, watching, and one day, he'll be back. What would you do in a situation like this? Leave a comment below and let me know. The bar had its usual crowd that night: loud conversations, the clinking of glasses, and the constant hum of music. But then they walked in, an elderly couple, too old for this place. They moved slowly, deliberately, like they didn't belong in this century. They didn't sit at the bar, didn't order drinks. They just took the booth in the corner and sat motionless. At first, I didn't think much of it. Maybe they were just waiting for someone. But as the night dragged on, something felt wrong. They never spoke, never moved, and they never blinked. I finally walked over, putting on my best bartender smile. "Can I get you folks anything?" The woman didn't react at all. She kept staring at the wall. The man, though, he turned his head, slowly, like his neck barely worked, and when I saw his face, my stomach dropped. His skin was pale, almost gray. His lips were cracked, his eyes, deep sunken holes that held nothing behind them. He didn't answer, just stared at me. Then finally he shook his head. I felt my entire body tense. The way he looked at me, it wasn't normal. I nodded, muttered something, and walked away fast. But I could still feel him watching me. Hours passed. I avoided looking at them. But then, when I finally glanced at the booth again, they were gone. The seats were empty. No drinks. No sign they had ever been there. I turned to my coworker, Karen. "Hey, where did that old couple go?" She frowned. "What couple?" I stared at her. The couple in the corner booth. They were sitting there for hours. Karen shook her head. "That booth's been empty all night." My blood ran cold. I knew what I saw. But then, why did no one else remember them? I tried to shake it off. Maybe I was tired. Maybe I was imagining things. That's what I told myself. Until I walked to my car. The parking lot was empty, except for two figures standing under the streetlight, the same elderly couple. Their heads were slightly tilted, their mouths barely open, like they were trying to speak without making a sound. I froze. Then, just as I blinked, they were gone. I barely slept that night. My dreams were filled with silent figures watching me from the corners of my room. But when I woke up, they weren't just dreams, because the first thing I saw was my bedroom door, and it was wide open. I always locked my door. Always. I reached for my phone, my fingers trembling. But before I could dial, I noticed something on my nightstand. A single old-fashioned coin. Not mine. I knew, without a doubt, they had been inside. I moved out that week. New place, new locks, new everything. I told myself it was over, until I found the second coin, sitting on my new kitchen counter, polished, waiting, and when I looked up at my window, they were standing outside, smiling, waiting. For what? I don't want to find out. I didn't touch the coin at first. I didn't even want to go near it, but it sat there, waiting. I grabbed a paper towel, wrapped the coin, and tossed it into the trash. Then, just to be sure, I took the trash bag outside, stuffed it into the bin, and wheeled it to the curb. I felt better, for a little while. But the next morning, when I went to make coffee, I froze, because the coin was back, sitting in the exact same spot, polished, waiting, like I had never thrown it away. That night I lay in bed, my heart pounding. I told myself I was imagining things, that it was just paranoia. But then I heard it, a faint ticking, like the sound of an old pocket watch. I turned my head toward my nightstand. The coin was there. I felt a scream rising in my throat, but before I could move, the ticking stopped, and I swear to God, I heard a whisper. "You see us now." Part 9. The Figures in the Reflection. The next day, I tried to pretend nothing happened. I went to work, poured drinks, forced smiles. But every time I passed a mirror or a window, I saw them, standing just behind me, motionless, watching, but when I turned around, nothing. I was losing my mind. I was sure of it, until Karen pulled me aside. "You look pale as hell," she said. "Are you okay?" I almost laughed. How was I supposed to explain this? Instead, I just muttered, "I haven't been sleeping." Karen hesitated. Then she said, "You, haven't been talking to anyone weird, have you?" My stomach turned. "Why?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Karen bit her lip, then looked over her shoulder. "Because I keep thinking I see someone standing near you, but when I look again, they're gone." I felt the blood drain from my face. That night, I set up my phone to record while I slept. I needed proof, needed to know if I was losing it, or if something was really there. When I woke up the next morning, the phone was still there, still recording. I took a deep breath and hit play. The first few hours, nothing. But then, at exactly 3:12 a.m., the footage glitched. For a full 3 seconds, the screen was just static. And then, when it cleared, there was someone standing over my bed, not moving, not breathing, just watching. I nearly dropped the phone. My breath came in short, panicked gasps. I rewound, trying to make out a face, but there was none, just hollow black voids where eyes should have been. And then, as I watched, the figure tilted its head, like it knew I was watching it, and then, before my eyes, it vanished. I packed a bag. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay. But as I turned to leave, something cold brushed against my palm. I looked down. A third coin. I dropped it like it burned me, my pulse racing. The whisper came again. "You see us now." I ran. I checked into a hotel, shaking as I locked the door. For the first time in weeks, I felt safe. But then, at exactly 3:12 a.m., the ticking started again, slow, steady. I turned toward the nightstand. The coin was there, waiting. I grabbed it, my breath coming in sharp gasps. "What do you want?" I shouted. Silence, and then a soft fingertip tap against the hotel mirror, from the inside. I barely had time to react before the lights flickered, and they stepped out. I woke up in my own bed. The hotel? Gone? The escape? Never happened. Had it been a dream? A hallucination? Then I looked at my nightstand. 3 coins. Polished. Waiting. And when I turned to my bedroom mirror, they were there. Watching. Waiting. For what? I don't want to find out. Heartbreak can make people do strange things. I thought a night out playing pool would help me move on from my ex, but what I found instead was something far more disturbing. The bar was exactly how I remembered it. Dimly lit, worn down, and comforting in its own way. But nostalgia has a way of playing tricks on you. A man around my age asked if I was up for a game. It felt good to play again, to just enjoy the moment. But the moment didn't last. His demeanor shifted the second I declined his invitation back to his place. His face twisted in frustration, his grip on my wrist tightening. I barely had time to react before he yanked my purse away. A couple of older men at the bar noticed and intervened. The man muttered something under his breath, tossed my purse onto the table, and stormed out. Shaken, I grabbed my things and called for an Uber. I wanted to forget the whole thing ever happened, but it wasn't over. As I stepped out of the car, my phone buzzed with a chilling notification. AirTag found moving with you. My breath caught as I rummaged through my bag. My fingers brushed against a small, unfamiliar object. My pulse pounded in my ears as I realized he had slipped a tracker into my purse. He knew where I was. Being a bartender means dealing with all kinds of people, but nothing prepared me for the man who walked in that night. He didn't fit in with the usual upscale crowd, disheveled, angry, and laser-focused on me. I barely had time to greet him before he uttered a sentence that froze me in place. "I knew I'd find you here, Kevin." My name. How did he know my name? I had never seen him before in my life. He didn't explain. He just downed his drink and walked away, leaving me standing there, rattled. I spent the rest of the night trying to push the encounter out of my mind, but sleep did not come easy. Somewhere in the dead of night, I woke with an unshakable feeling of being watched. As my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I saw it. A shadowy figure standing in the corner of my room. I forced myself to stay still, my mind racing. Then, in a split-second decision, I lunged. But before I could reach him, he bolted out of the room. Something clattered to the floor in his wake. It was a knife, one from my own kitchen. I locked every door and called the police, but there was no sign of forced entry, no sign of how he got in, and no trace of the man from the bar. The bar had its usual crowd that night. Loud conversations, the clinking of glasses, and the constant hum of music. But then, they walked in. An elderly couple, too old for this place. They moved slowly, deliberately, like they didn't belong in this century. They didn't sit at the bar, didn't order drinks. They just took the booth in the corner and sat motionless. At first, I didn't think much of it. Maybe they were just waiting for someone. But as the night dragged on, something felt wrong. They never spoke, never moved, and they never blinked. I couldn't stay in my apartment that night. I checked into a cheap motel on the edge of town, hoping that distance would make me feel safer. It didn't. At exactly 3:12 a.m., I woke up to a noise, a faint rhythmic tapping. I sat up in bed, my pulse hammering in my ears. The sound was coming from the bathroom, more specifically, the mirror, tap, tap, tap. I didn't want to move, didn't want to see, but something in me knew. I had no choice. Slowly, I got up, walked across the room. My hand trembled as I flicked on the bathroom light, and there, in the mirror, wasn't me. I was standing there. I could see myself, but my reflection was wrong. I wasn't blinking, I wasn't breathing, and I was smiling. I backed away, my entire body screaming for me to run, but then my reflection moved, not in sync with me, not like a normal mirror. It stepped forward. The glass didn't break. It just let him through. I ran. I left the motel that night, drove for hours aimlessly, trying to put distance between myself and them, but it didn't matter. Wherever I went, they followed. Coins appeared in my pockets, shadows stood outside my windows, and every night at 3:12 a.m., I woke up knowing I was being watched. Last night, I found something new, scratched into my bedroom wall, deep, jagged letters that hadn't been there before. You see us now. I don't know what happens next. I don't know if I can escape. All I know is, at 3:12 a.m. tonight, they're coming back. And this time, they won't let me go. If you never want to miss another terrifying tale, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. The next nightmare could be closer than you think.